Let's get deep today. Dramatic. Well, hello and welcome to the Tequila Hour. My name is Amanda. It is Sunday. I don't know what day it is. I know it's the last day of March. I'm pretty sure of that. It is. It is not the last day of March. It is the 30th of March, 2025. Tomorrow is the last day of March. If you know the rhyme, do the time. Anyway, I'm going deep today. You'd be like, what are you talking about, Amanda? Should I be concerned about this? What do you mean? I want to talk about the goal of meaning. And I'm straight into it. So this will be probably a more deeper conversation than I normally have. So if you haven't done so already, grab yourself a drink and a snack. Just by the way, if you are playing along, I'm drinking a Monster iced peachy keen, cold. It's not iced, but it's cold. And I'm also drinking a very, very ushi, if you know, you know, Japanese sake, which is yuzu flavored. And why am I drinking that? Because I love it. And I suppose I'm letting it help me channel what I want to talk about today. So the goal of meaning. And what do I mean by that? For someone who doesn't know me in my day-to-day life, you probably wouldn't know that for me, most definitely in the last couple of years and most definitely in the last probably strong year or even 6 months, where there has been a higher level of spirituality in my life, or it's more impacted. What does that look like? I will unpack that today. But I really wanted to talk about this subject in line with my recent... Sorry, I was looking... You'd be like, why did you pause? I just burnt some Santo Palo, is that what you call it? In the background, and I thought it was still burning. Anyway, I was just having a moment. Why am I talking about this today? I'm following my gut and I'm following my intuition. A lot of times my podcast is like that, where I just have, a flurry of ideas in my mind about subjects and items and all the rest of it that I want to talk about, and then I'll choose one at the very last moment and go with it. I don't normally research my podcast discussion in depth in any way. I like the free format of that. It mightn't be doing me much favours, but that's how I roll. Why I want to talk about this in particular today, when I talk about the goal of meaning, and I suppose this for me aligns to a lot of things in regards to spirituality, when I'm talking about what is the meaning, what is the meaning for you, what is intuition, what does that mean to you, what does that mean to me, and then what does that really mean overall? So when I talk about a journey, when I talk about the last 2 years, let's talk about it. It's really been a lifelong journey, to be honest, and it will always be, and I have mentioned this before, but it really has been, a higher level, a higher target of thought in the last couple of years, mainly due to circumstances that have really resonated a higher level or a higher need to really examine what my meaning of all of this is. And not that I need to, look, I think as human beings, we all have that moment or moments in our life where we feel like we need to sort everything out and know the meaning and purpose of everything. And to be honest, being a podcaster and someone who watches podcasts, I listen to them, but I've mentioned this, I'm a more visual person, so I'll watch my podcasts. This is a subject that it can be overwhelming, I could imagine, if it's not something that you're aware of. What I was trying to lead into, it is a subject that is discussed more and more and can at times feel like it's being shoved down your throat if it's something that and that probably sounds harsh, but it really is something that, it is a topic that a lot of people do talk about. And perhaps it's more that I'm more in tune and watched a lot of these type of podcasts. But if you want to then align that to the self-help industry and the sheer volume of podcasts that now talk about some of the subjects that I'm going to talk about today, then you might be like, why should I listen to you? That's probably a good question I could start with. Why would you want to listen to anything I had to say? So for those who do listen to my podcast, you know that I have recently gone to Japan. And in my last podcast where I very briefly talked about my trip to Japan and some of my thoughts and feelings around that and the impact of that one visit that it had on my life, which I knew it would and always would have that type of impact because there was a knowing around that. And I suppose that leads to a discussion around intuition, and then which aligns kind of, I suppose it does, well, it doesn't suppose it does, align with spirituality. It can also outline or be an outliner of that as well if you believe in that. But for me, I believe it does align with something. I don't know what that something is in its entirety. And then being comfortable with that you don't know what that is. And then what is the meaning of it all to you? So with going to Japan, which culminated, is that the word I'm trying to spit out? I'm just going to have a quick sip of my sake. Give me a second. Drink break. Yes, if that's so good. Just saying. Yes, I'll put it in the description for those who'd like to know. Japan. So it was the culmination of not only a vision but a goal, purpose, a place that I wanted to visit. That goal became a reality. I went to Japan. I want to go back. I touched on this briefly last week about a deep sense of longing for Japan and a deep sense of wanting to live in Japan. I actually had an interesting conversation with a colleague the other day where we talked about many things, but this is something that it came to mind and I brought it up, and it was interesting to actually get someone's perspective separate to my own when I talk about the strong inclination that I have in my soul to move to Japan. And we had a discussion around what does that look like, or what do you mean? And you mean now, or do you mean have you spoken to your husband? All this kind of thing was part of a quick synopsis of the conversation as part of a larger conversation. And it's funny because that day I did say to this particular person, I actually haven't spoken to my husband about these feelings that I have in its true sense. I know that he is aware of my, passion for Japan and how much I enjoyed my holiday and how much I loved being there and how much I'm looking forward to going back. I don't know again, this is an assumption. I don't know if he has an understanding of my deep feelings around this. But leading into the conversation I had with this particular person, and which for me was interesting because they didn't, which was quite refreshing actually, they didn't, and again, I'm going to repeat this in a way as well, that it really marks for me someone who, we're not good friends, but I would say to you they are a friend in the sense that there was no judgment or why would you do that or negativity or positivity. It was just listening and, acknowledging what I had to say. So thank you to that person. If they can hear me, they can't. Then as part of that conversation, I went home to my husband. Obviously, my day was done. I went home and I thought, as part of that, it's a female I was speaking to, kind of said to me, have you spoken to your husband about it? So I randomly, just as part of a conversation, because I think it was the night before where we were watching a YouTube video in regards to the abandoned house craze that's, phenomenon that's happening in Japan. And I can certainly do a podcast about that where, houses are going cheap. And we just happened to watch this video where I believe it was a US citizen had purchased a house for $6,000 US, moved in, yada, yada, yada. Anyway, after that day, I'll get there. After that day and that conversation with my friend, I went home and I just randomly chucked in that, what if I said, I wanted to move to Japan? Like, I just lighthearted, I didn't go, I'm moving to Japan. I just lightheartedly said, what do you think if I was to say, we should move to Japan? I think that's how I worded it, something like that. And look, I'm not going to say what my husband said because it probably wouldn't, I know it wouldn't then cast him in a good light, which is unfortunate because he was giving his honest opinion. I don't think he knew that I was actually being serious, so that might be why he was speaking the way he was. But it also shed some light on perhaps what he truly might be thinking if I said, guess what? I'd really want to move to Japan and I'd really like you to come with me. So it was an interesting snapshot to see what the reaction would be. And why I'm talking about this is when we talk about, or when I should be clear, when I talk about the goal of meaning, when I talk about intuition, when I talk about self-development and self-reflection and self-examination, which on numerous podcasts I've talked about, that is something that I have been working on through for many reasons over the last couple of years, to a point now where after Japan with a P, not a B, that I really came to a place which I've always known, but I think there was just a moment which I think we all, as human beings, if you are someone who self-examines themselves long enough, the answer will finally come to you. May that be because you've just finally pulled back enough bullshit out of your eyes to see the true picture of self, or could it be that, it's finally you've reached a place in your intuition journey where you are in touch with whatever that might look to you, that you get the answer, or all of the above. I would say to you it's all of the above. I will say that, there was a saying that came to mind and then gave me some clarity of something that I needed. So the saying being, the moment of time where, I think I discussed this once in a podcast, where when I was a teenager, I won't go into the full story, but there was a period when I was going to university, and I decided to drop out. And instead of, like I'm going to put it off for a year or I'm going back or whatever, I made the choice that I wasn't going back at all. And this discussion happened many, like I'm 52 and I think that this happened when I was 17. So fucking a long time ago. Give me a second. Quick sake sip. Sake sip. That could be misconstrued, couldn't it? That, yes, in this particular moment of time where I had this conversation with my parents and we were in a public park and I did it purposely on this particular day, shitting myself thinking I'm going to do it in public so that they can't do anything to me. I don't know why I was thinking that way. Probably because I was just so scared because of my own fear and insecurity, basically. And, God bless me, I was fucking 17 and no wonder I was fucking scared. That, yeah, the resounding response which echoes in the halls of my mind even to this day subliminally is, "We are so disappointed in you, Amanda." And, yeah, it's just one line which, for whatever reason, created such a chasm of mistrust in myself and a lack of worthiness in myself and my thoughts and my beliefs that through the span of time continued throughout my entire life, entire being. Maybe at some times and points in my life it was more visible and I understood where it was coming from, but I would say to you from the majority of the time it was in my subconscious and it eroded the complete sense of feeling worthy or feeling valid or being worthy of anything, really, and true belief in myself. And it sounds very dramatic, I know, and not a but, because I was trying to not say but anymore as well, which is very hard actually, by the way. That, yeah, it's one of those things where when you have such an impactful moment in your life that then it just attaches itself to your psyche somehow in some way, more than likely due to my childhood, clearly. I acknowledge that. But yet it affects your life subconsciously I'll spit it out, subconsciously for such a long period of time. Who knows why in its entirety? I'd say to you it's many things. But rounding it back in the circle of life, it really was this particular day about 2 weeks ago or a week ago when I was thinking, I am enough. I know I've talked about this before, but I am worthy. And that first of all, that sentence came to mind. And then I'm like, I suppose it comes down to validation and what am I trying to get validation from? And I am worthy. And it's kind of, I don't know if the shoe dropped or the shoe's always been dropping slowly in midair. Yet I really did have a sense of feeling it for the first time in a very long time. And I know I've felt worthy before because when I really examined my heart and my thought at that very moment of time when I was having these many thoughts running through it, that it really did make me stop and go, yeah, I am. And I actually believed it. And I think that's a lot to do with, like I said, the self-examination and reflection, but also making a conscious choice of really just doing the things now that are coming from my heart and coming through with the assistance of whatever the spirit is to me. I don't know what that is in its entirety and I can't really explain it. I can explain it to you as, and I think a lot of people would explain intuition as that self voice, that or that gut feeling, or I mean, you could use it as, let's give an example to try and make it clearer. An example being where, let's say you're about to cross a busy street and you don't know that there's a truck coming, and there's something, for some reason, instead of you just running across the street because you were in a rush to go and get your coffee from across the road from your favourite coffee shop, you have a gut sense, like truly an actual feeling in your gut. It might be in your chest, it might be a physical feeling that you to stop. And you actually listen to it and you stop, and then the truck goes by. And sometimes you don't even see the truck, let's say. Sometimes you have the feeling, you stop, and that's it. To say to you that this is the feeling and the thoughts around that gut feeling and what that feels like and where that source is coming from is something that I am in examination of right now in my life. And that's when I talk about it being quite a deep subject, because these are kind of, to me, not subjects that, well, not that I don't, I really, maybe if I opened up more in the sense of, like my friend the other day, where I opened up a discussion around this, not about intuition, about, that sense of following a gut feeling, perhaps I'd have more real life feedback from others. But there's that but. That, yes, it is something that I am examining on a closer level. And it's not even to try and explain it. It could be, in one sense, I'm wanting to learn more about it so that I can explain it to other people. Could that be so that I could share more of myself, but have a more sense of sharing with others and my feelings around community, and leads into other discussions. For me, I never thought, well, let me say this. There has been several moments, if I can't even count. I can count. I mean, do you want me to give you 10 examples? No. I acknowledge multiple times in my life where it is clear to me that I do have some sense of spirituality in my life, some sort of connection with what that looks like, what spirit is. I don't know. I think I've mentioned this. I don't know if I need to label it as God, or it's a presence, or it's an angel or angels. It just is. And I think that's what I'm leaning towards. That it's really in the last periods of my life where I've opened my mind, and more importantly, opened my heart to trusting the gut feeling and to listen to the internal voice. Now, I'm going to say, for a long time, I know I didn't trust my internal voice. I would say to you, kind of leads down to many similar themes around that statement I made earlier about my parents saying they were disappointed, that I didn't want to believe in an internal voice or in any type of intuition, that I didn't believe it or trust it. Or for me as well, there was a component of my mental health where you'd be like, what's that got to do with it? And this is all, and it is, in a sense, it's all part of, your brain and your mental capacity. That there was times when I have experienced moments in my life where, through disassociation, through extreme depression, where I have seen things and heard things that weren't necessarily what other people heard or saw. And it wasn't in line with intuition in any way. It was due to my mental health and my mind state at that time. So there was and has always been a slight conflict internally around that in reference to believing what's real and what's not. Then to getting to a place where I can confidently say to you today that I want to be at 100, and I don't know if I need to be. That's probably something I also need to give myself some grace on, is I am listening to that internal voice, and it really does, and it sounds like a voice. And is it my voice? It could be. It could be my voice talking to myself. I don't think at times it is. I think it's just a voice. And there's also where I talk about intuition in the sense of physical sensations. So may that be where, I don't know, let me give you an example. So this is not intuition, but this is like sense of self, I suppose. That these are conversations, they all blend, where let's talk about love. Love's a really good example. So I'm at 27.05. Yeah, take that as you will. A quick trick. That love. We all know, well, hopefully, most people in their life get to experience love. May that be love to love someone, to love yourself, to love another human, to love another person, another being. May that be a tree, I don't know, because I'm looking at trees, by the way. May that be your dog, may that be a cat, may that be a fish, may that be a bird in a tree, may that be the sky. I suppose logically there could be people who've never felt love in its purest sense. I would say to you, most people would know what that feeling is. If it's not just, it is the sense of being in love or loving someone, is that sense of, say your husband, okay? You love your husband and he walks in the door and, you have a sense of love for him and you physically feel that love. It's, it might be an ache in your heart, or it might be when he's not there, it might be an ache in your stomach because you miss him, or it might be where, you touch each other and you have a hug or a kiss or lots of other things and you physically feel that in your body. To say that, if I was to bring that in line with the conversation around intuition and that example I gave of crossing the road and then stopping because you had that feeling, like a physical but mental feeling that something was wrong, or you didn't know, you might have known, from thinking something bad was going to happen to all the way through to there's a truck coming and I need to stop. This is what I'm talking about. So there's levels of this. And I suppose around all these types of conversations, you'll often hear people talk about, getting in touch with spirit, in touch with your heart and in touch with your intuition and listening to that. So that's when I talk about those levels, because on a very deep baseline level where your mind and body through whatever that connectivity is to spirit for you, your whole being is gone, shit, there's a truck coming, and it stopped you, all the way through to you saw the truck coming in real time, you stopped yourself because then you not only realised that was happening, you saw the truck in the future and felt it coming. I don't know, we could go there, but there's levels to this. So when you, like myself, where I'm at a place now where you take away the veil of any concerns you might have. Like I said, a concern around, for me, mental health. And again, it's never been a concern. It's more not that I thought I was going insane and, the inner voice was, I don't know, a leprechaun. I don't, no. That to really stop and be comfortable in all of this has been something that I'm working on, and I probably will work on for some time. And that then leads into things like going to Japan and spending time on my own, or spending time in spiritual practice, may that be for you. For me, it's, forms of meditation. It might be, and it is, listening to certain podcasts. For me, it's listening to, like, I listen to hypnotherapy through the Breathe app. At the moment, I'm listening to a particular hypnotherapy meditation every night. There's things like this that will then, I know, create a greater space in your heart and body connection to what intuition is for you. And yeah, it's such an interesting topic of discussion for me, because I know personally, if I want to talk it in reference to me and my life, where I can honestly say that there's always been a sense of that gut feeling. I think there's just been levels of time in my life, depending on, where I was in my life, where I heard it clearly and I didn't hear it at all. And to now come to a place where I'm aware and conscious of it, and really trying to foster a greater relationship in that, and to see how expansive it can be, is for me a very fascinating, complex, very interesting journey, because for me it aligns with things that really do fascinate me. May it be quantum physics, may it be the concept of resonance, and they all extraordinarily intertwine and entangle themselves. So yeah, that's what I'm talking about. And then when I'm talking about the meaning, the goal of meaning, I want to go back to that conversation I was having where I was saying that, that feeling of being worthy or valid, or, just being happy and grateful for where you are. And I think I've touched on this in the past, where I have sought validation from others and in other places. And it was really for the first time where I thought, I really don't need to do that anymore, because I've always been able to validate myself. So why am I still doing this? And that's when that conversation from my past came into my mind, and I thought, well, yeah, that might do it. That I just never really had the belief in myself all along, when I knew all along it was there. And that leads to other things like internal strength as well, which I know I have a bucket shit ton of. Yet that kind of piece of the puzzle, talking about worthiness and validation and, that constant need to seek validation from others, may it be the people you love, or may it be your work, or may it be your friends, or just life in general, really, and all of the above, to then be comfortable in the fact that I don't need to do that anymore and actually believe it, has really created for me a real internal sense of calmness that I've never really felt fully. And for me, for someone who I've talked about my mental health in relation to depression and anxiety, and I want to talk about anxiety, to be in a place where there is a sense of calmness that you can control and you feel calm, like truly calm in your heart and comfortable with that feeling, and not even question it, just acknowledge it and love it. That's what I feel today. And that's what comes to me when I talk about the goal of meaning is that's what it is for me, is just being comfortable in me as a person and being aligned to spirit, being aligned to my intuition, to my heart space, my soul, which are all intertwined, and just being comfortable with that. And that's it. Not needing more, not needing less. I mean, I'd like to understand more. And I know that I am the type of person where I will always want to understand more and not see that as a negative thing as well. It's more a curiosity and not trying to solve, but just trying to understand more and see more and feel more. And it's with an openness that when you concentrate on these kind of feelings, like if you concentrate on intuition or spirit or all of the above, or your heart space or your soul and all these kind of nuggets of life, it's amazing how things change and how other things that you thought were important. And I suppose this is what all the great teachers of spirituality really are all along trying to get at. And yeah, I'm just now at a space where for me, making certain solid decisions in my life to now align with what I am wanting to do, like go to Japan and spend time alone in Japan and study spirituality and move to Japan and do things that inspire my soul and feed my soul, and to love my husband more and to be there for him and be there for the people who I love and support them just through support without needing or wanting anything from them. Yeah, it's just a really great place to be. And I often think, like even today, I was thinking, how do you explain intuition and how do you explain that heart space and that feeling of fullness, and how do you explain that voice, without thinking that it, like I said, you've got a leprechaun on your shoulder, talking to you and no one else hears it. It's interesting because, if you were just to have a conversation with someone who perhaps you didn't trust, maybe this is what comes down to as well, perhaps just in an everyday conversation, you started talking about, I have conversations with my inner voice, and, if something I need to ask something, I'll ask the question and wait for a response, and off that response, I'll do it or not. You could easily see why most people, reasonable or not, would think you might be a little bit wacko. But again, is that my own thoughts and feelings around that through my life experiences, or is that just really what society thinks? I suppose it's a bit of A and bit of B, to be honest. I would have to, in my opinion, that's what I think it would be. But yeah, to try and explain that in layman's terms, I suppose that's what I'm trying to get at. That sense of, like if I was to, map out an average day as an example, and, say that was something that came up, and instead of me I'm not talking about blanket, black and white question and answers. It's more like, should I do this or something, and then asking self and then waiting for the response. And then whatever that response is, not overriding it with your own response, but going with the response you hear. I don't know, that's really fascinating to me, and it's very hard to explain that somehow I don't think that voice that's answering my question is my inner self in a way. I mean, it is, but I'm saying to you that that inner voice is direct from what I believe spirit is, from the universe. That it is that sense of just going along, believing it is what it is and not trying to control it or change it or modify it or manipulate it to suit my own narrative, but to more ask the question and whatever response is and go, okay, and then leave it at that. And it's just talking about it, and that's why I wanted to talk about it today, it's such a fascinating concept, idea, way of life that I never thought really I'd be as comfortable as I am, learning to be comfortable with as I am today. And yeah, that's why I'm talking about it, because I think it's just truly beautiful. And I think for me, why I think it's truly beautiful, because it's just it feels pure and real and just feels right. And yeah, it's such an interesting thing to me. And like I said, because it's not a tangible thing, I can't say to you, I ask my inner spirit, I ask for guidance, and that voice says something, and I can't record that voice. Or do you know what I mean? It's not a tangible thing, it's an internal thing. And then that comes down to that, that concept where we again, this is, look, it's not my own perception on this, it's a world's perception, that we always need evidence or support or proof, to explain the unexplainable. We're surrendering to the unexplainable and being comfortable with that is, I don't know, it feels like, and this is where when I'm talking about gut feelings as well, it truly does align with my soul. And when I say that, I don't know when something's in alignment with me as a human being, as myself, is because my chest hurts. Not bad. No, I'm not having a hearty. Heart attack. No, it aches. If you've ever had that, and I suppose anyone who's been in love and lost anyone, or even, your husband walks out the door and you feel sad because you miss him, your heart aches. And clearly, for anyone who's lost anyone, the level of heartache can be low to extreme. That for me, when I know I'm in touch with that and my heart feels warm, like I actually physically feel my chest feel warm and my heart feels warm, and it's like my heart space, my actual physical heart in my body feels like it grows, it's bigger, it's larger. I don't know, it's just pure and beautiful, and these are the kind of things that I am not trying to grasp, because in a way I'm just trying to let them come through, but just so completely in love with the whole idea of it. And that could be because I'm just trusting it. And yeah, I never thought I'd get to a place where, I don't know, I suppose I've never really thought like this before, or had these kind of conversations in its entirety with anybody. So yeah, I wanted to talk about it because I there's been, I've watched, and I think I've discussed this before, where I do watch a lot of YouTube and I do also watch several tarot readers and, they talk about alignments and things like that. And look, it's not something that I completely in depth follow because there's a lot to it. I listen and then take away what I need to hear, I believe. I'm trusting with that. But I am aware that, at the moment, if you were to talk about, for someone, I'm an Aquarian, as in my star sign, and they talk about all the things that are happening at the moment with, stars and planets and all that kind of good stuff. And I really do have more of an alignment with that as I get older and older. It could be as well because instead it comes back to that worthiness and validation to me as well. Instead of trying to find that level of meaning and purpose and validation and worthiness in others and other things or other tasks or whatever they may be, that I'm now finding the things that align with me truly, and learning to be comfortable with that in its full sense. So these are kind of some of the things that I'm expanding my heart and mind to. And like I said, for anyone who, if you listen to this and you've never been on this kind of discovery, self-discovery before, I don't know, I will listen to this podcast back and you'd be like, Amanda, you've lost your marbles. And I say, no, I haven't. Quick sip of my sake, by the way. Oh, so good. Yuzu, yum. That I think last week I touched on this when I was talking about, the whole, you're in your 50s and you're having a moment or you're having a crisis or whatever. And I was saying to that same friend the other day where I think it's more that through the whole experience of life, you come out to a point in your life where you've seen it all or done a lot of it. And you're really then at a place where you really then can examine, because of the sheer volume of knowledge you have in your library of life, to go, yep, no, yep. Do you know what I mean? And actually have the expanse to do it. Where, in your 20s and 30s, you're nowhere near that unless you're an old soul, I imagine. I don't know. That's why I don't think it's a crisis. I really think it's just now where you get to your 40s and 50s where that library is full, usually through myriad of life experiences, where you can just, take the book out and really start to examine all the different books in a clear, open space, because you've got the work, you've got an open workshop and you've got the tools to now really examine shit because you've been through some shit. And it's just fascinating to me because, you have this twinge. Like I had a twinge the other day where I'm like, why didn't I work this out a long time ago? Why didn't I know, have more trust in spirit or my sense of self or my heart or my heart space prior to this? You know what I mean? You start to do that a little bit. And then you kind of, you stop yourself and go, well, for whatever reason, you went through A, B, and all the way to Z and you're still here, so there must be a reason why, and just go, okay, and get on with it kind of thing. Because if you live in I think we all can agree that if you live in a space of regret, you will just, I was going to say curl up and die. That's very extreme. No, you'll just keep berating yourself for all time, and you will never give yourself the open space to feel what's really at the core of everything. I'm really seeing that the core of everything is I don't know, people have said this, and I've never thought to myself this is contrite or silly or stupid or unwarranted and all those kind of things. I suppose because it's so intertwined, love, you know, love for the person or people that you love, and then just love for yourself. Because really, in the end, there's no greater, I don't know, it's the greatest. I suppose Whitney said it best. No. No, she did. Poor Whitney, Miss Whitney Houston. I wish she was alive. She's a beautiful. I don't know what she was as a person, but her voice. Yeah, stunning, Yeah, it's love, isn't it? I don't know. You hear that? I haven't read a lot of spiritual text, at all. I mean, I've read a lot of self-help books and things like that and watched a lot of podcasts, and I've still got books to read about self-development, but I haven't read many religious texts at all, like front to back. But I do acknowledge for a lot of religion, it can come down to that, to the love, you know, that pureness of love for God, I suppose, and love for Jesus. And what comes to mind, I could be off track here because I don't know much about the Bible. I only know a little bit from Anglican Sunday school as a child. That's pretty much the wealth of my knowledge there. That when I think about it right at this moment of time, it really is that love. And you think about love, and for me, it's like literally the sun comes out and my heart feels full and my heart aches, and it's feeding my soul. And yeah, it's a sense of meaning that maybe that's it. Maybe it is just about love. It's not about, it's clearly not about the material. I mean, we can get into that conversation. You know, we all know that money gets you things, and we all love our things. But we also know, you know, and I love all the things I have. I'm not going to lie. I love all the absolutely beautiful, stunning things that I've worked hard for and have in my possession. I also know, though, that the sort of, I don't know, this podcast microphone, this Rode microphone, I love. I mean, it gives me a voice to record this podcast, so I love it very much. It's an item. It cost a bit of money. Oh, it cost a couple $100. Now I'm trying to explain away my financial purchases. It feeds a purpose. It doesn't feed my soul is probably what I'm trying to get at. Where I can say to you that, a bit like makeup, I love my makeup, I love my perfume, I love my skincare. You know, I love putting makeup on my face and playing with makeup. But it is life, but it's an item. Do you know what I mean? And it fills my heart. It brings me joy, but it doesn't fill my heart in the sense of like the love I have for my husband fills my heart. And just the love that I have for myself. And I hesitated there because I'm like, do I? Do I have love for myself? And that's probably what comes, nice circle, by a nice symmetry there, where I talk about the goal of meaning. What is the goal? You know, what is the goal of life, or the life of meaning, or what are we all aiming for, and what is it all about, and what do we really want? And is what we want what we really truly want? Is it going to feed our soul? Do we want to feed our soul? Do we have a soul? I mean, I know I do. I don't know if other people think the way I do. I know they do. There are other people who think the way I do, or an even deeper level than I do. But in a day-to-day world, where you're married or you're not, you live alone or you have a family, and I don't know, from a personal perspective, I'm sure there are families who indulge in these conversations always. But in my world, in a day-to-day life, I'm not having these conversations every single day. So that's where I've had to give myself that space, because I've been compelled to, really, by that sense of meaning, by that intuition, by that spirit, to really examine these themes, because I know the deeper I examine them, the more full I feel in my heart. And for me, that then leads into other decisions that I make in my life, like going back to Japan, like living in Japan, like leaving my job, like examining my friendships, like examining my relationships with everybody, creating a greater sense of love and acceptance with my husband is something that I know. I adore my husband very much, and I know, like, for anyone who's married, you have your moments or whatever, but he truly is a deep part of my soul. I'm going to cry. So how do I foster that within the scope of what I'm working on? Do you know what I mean? These things where, would I like him to align to everything my way of thinking? I don't think I do, because I think in the way our significant differences was what makes us great as people, and for whatever reason has brought us together to help each other. So I am grateful that he is so different to me in that sense, because I could understand just having a yes person in your life could easily tarnish, or easily, not tarnish is not the right word, it could easily cloud your judgment, where perhaps having someone who is the complete opposite in certain things around these kind of subjects to yourself does give a greater sense of challenge and then purpose to really examine what this means to you. So I can appreciate that, even though it can be frustrating. Like I said, bringing up that discussion around moving to Japan in a lighthearted manner, just to see what his reaction was, and the reaction. It's not that I didn't. Did I expect the reaction? I don't know, but I was a little bit like, is that really the first thing that comes to mind when we say that? I think in honesty, that I know my husband was very proud, and he is very proud of me. And I know he was very proud of me to go to Japan on my own, and with the Tripadil, that is, and to do all that and organise all that and be safe and be okay and come back. Do you know what I mean? I think as well that there and rightfully so, there's a portion of jealousy as well. I don't know if that jealousy is because he was jealous that he didn't get to go, or that I didn't sort it out, or that I wanted to go without him. I probably should ask him without trying to assume. But I know through a couple of times there is like a little, with a comment he'll make, there is a level of jealousy. And I don't think it's not meanfulness, it's just jealousy. And I don't know if that's because he really just wanted to do it too, and he never would, or that he was hurt that I did it in a way. So there is that component too of how do I navigate through my spiritual journal. I don't have a journal, by the way. My spiritual journey, in the sense of intuition, in sense of my soul journey and what that looks like, and the decisions I make in line with my intuition and my thought processes around that. because I think I can safely acknowledge, well, not even safely, I acknowledge that the deeper you examine these topics within yourself, the deeper they become more transparent and visible in your life. May that be good or bad, however you interpret that. For me, there has been a massive shift in, just like when I talked about it before, in that regards to levels of anxiety and being more comfortable with my sense of self and being in touch with my soul. And there for me, I know I am on the right track because there's just a deeper growing of calmness that I have from going with it, basically, more and more just going with it. And then letting the doors open to go, okay, well, let's go through this door and see what happens, and whatever happens is interesting. There is that level of fear, and I'm wondering when I will, if I allow it to just not have, or maybe there needs to be, I don't know, a component of fear with that. I mean, do you ever get to a place where you just are aligned and you don't question anything and you don't try and what do you call it? Circumnavigate? I couldn't spit out the word. Circumnavigate, try and sabotage, self-sabotage, all the good shit, you know what I mean? Fall to negativity, absorb the negativity, reside in negativity. And I know too, even through some of these conversations I'm talking today, just touching on negativity, I know personally as well with, when you're in environments that you're not in the same place as others, and not that you need everyone else to be, because really you then have to let everyone be who they are, and that's something I'm still trying to learn. I know of, but trying to just let go that, when you're in a certain place and other people are not at a certain place, and just that's okay. But then where is your place? When more and more you're like, I think my place is living on a farm in Japan away from everyone. Do you know what I mean? Maybe that's what it is. Maybe that is the end goal. I don't know. But maybe that is the meaning, the goal of meaning for me. I don't know. And that's the other thing, is that I don't know the answer. And in its entirety. And just, and just going, yep, okay. But along the journey, just making some choices and then asking spirit, asking the question and going with the answer and just going, okay. So, it's just fascinating to me. I don't know, for anyone who listens to this podcast, if you have the kind of same conversations you have with your mind and soul and heart, if you think about things like this, if you think about the meaning, your goal of meaning, the meaning of goals. No, we know what the meanings of goals are. The goal of meaning. If you think about your intuition, if you think about your soul and how they're all intertwined, if you think about spirit, if you think about God, if you think about, what do you think about? Or you think about nothing and you just think about the next thing that comes along and what that looks like. I don't know. I don't know, describe it as having my eyes wide open and my heart is open, and having someone hold my hand and they're not here, and how that makes just saying it makes my heart ache with love and fullness. And I think that's really what it's about. I think that's the goal of meaning. That feeling right there. So, what do you think? What do you think of all of that? If you listen to this podcast and you've never reached out to me, I'd love you to. I mean, no one ever does. I mean, I only have a very small audience who listens to my podcast and listens to this regularly. And, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with just putting out my thoughts into the universe and that's it. That's it. I will say, one day, whoever does reaches out to me and asks me a question, or I think for me, this is where it comes down to having a guest and then having someone to talk to. And I should do that. Sorry, I heard a noise. I think it's just next door. Anyway, yeah, just putting it out there that if you want to contact me anytime, you can, segue, via my email address being info@thetequilahour.com.au. I, as mentioned, use Instagram as my primary source of advertising a new episode that's coming up. I release an episode every Sunday here in Australia. I am in Australia, New South Wales, a secret location, if you didn't know. So I do release a podcast every Sunday. So if you're interested, my podcast is managed via the streaming platform Buzzsprout. It is available on your streaming platforms like Spotify and Apple are probably the most relatable and easy to recognize platforms that this podcast streams on. If you want to check me out, like I have Instagram, so the Tequila Hour and the _1_Amanda pages. And I also have the corresponding YouTube channels as well. So this was an interesting one for me today. I'm going to listen to it back because I'm very interested to hear my thoughts listening to myself back and what I actually said. Would love to hear from you. And if you've got any feedback that you'd like to add. And you know what? I'm going to catch you next week. I'll see you then. Bye.